Hello, everybody. My name is Stacia, and I'm just a girl on the internet that likes to talk about movies. And this week is going to be the 1966 movie, This Property is Condemned. This is an underrated classic. It is directed by Sidney Pollack, written by Francis Ford Coppola, starring Robert Redford and Natalie Wood. And it is based on a play by Tennessee Williams. And in this movie, it's a love story between Alva and Owen. Owen is a railroad employee played by Robert Redford who comes down to shut down the railroad stop in this southern city. Alva is a young woman whose mother runs the local boarding house that a lot of the train patrons stay at. It's sort of a transient town, and she runs the boarding house. So the railroad is shutting down their livelihood. But Owen stays at the boarding house, meets Alva, and they have a complicated relationship. It is in the heart a love story, but a complicated one. And this is all set during the Great Depression. The town is Dodson, Mississippi, like all Tennessee Williams plays. Of course, it takes place in the South. And the big city that they talk about in this movie is New Orleans. So when Alva talks about escaping to the big city, like she often does, she is referring to escaping to New Orleans. And Mary Badham plays Alva's sister in this movie. Her name is Willie. She's also the narrator of this story and how she sees everything going down through her eyes with her sister and the town basically dying. And Mary Badham might look familiar to you because this is her second movie. Her first movie was playing Scout in To Kill a Mockingbird. Kate Reid plays Alva and Willie's mother in this movie, Hazel. You'll also see a lot of familiar faces in this movie. Charles Bronson is in this movie as JJ. Robert Blake has a part in this movie. His character's name is Sidney. You also have a small part by Dabney Coleman in this movie where he plays a salesman. So they all pop up and it's instantly like, I've seen that face before. And this is the second pairing between Robert Redford and Natalie Wood. They became great friends. They actually went to high school together, but they met later in life where Natalie Wood was a big star already. Of course, she was a child star. So her name was already known. She did the movie Inside Daisy Clover, and Robert Redford was cast in that movie, and they reunited and their friendship blossomed. And this movie is, of course, not one of Natalie Wood's most popular. It didn't do well at the box office, but I personally have always loved this movie. I think she is fantastic in this movie, and This Property is Condemned teams Redford and Wood, and they are great together. And I think the movie itself deserves another look. At the time, it wasn't well received. Even Tennessee Williams didn't like it. He threatened to take his name off the movie credits because it's based on one of his shorter plays. It was a troubled production, also. The script wasn't even finished when they started filming. They were doing constant rewrites during the filming of the movie. Natalie Wood recalled in interviews that the actors would just make up dialogue off the top of their heads. And that was because not only the script wasn't finished, what was being written was kind of unusable. I don't mean this as a slight to Francis Ford Coppola either. He did what he could while writing it. Natalie Wood had a lot of trouble in her personal life during this time where she attempted suicide while making this movie. But all in all, Robert Redford, Natalie Wood, and Sidney Pollack were pleased with the outcome of this movie, even though people like Tennessee Williams weren't so much. And this happens to be Francis Ford Coppola's really first foray into real Hollywood features after being part of Roger Corman's troupe of writer and directors for years. And this was supposed to be a big prestige movie for Natalie Wood. She had years of kind of flops after being a big star, especially in the early 60s. And this is her nearing her late 30s and trying to get out of that young ingenue, sort of, but it didn't really pan out for her at the time. She thought this would be a comeback for her. She thought she would get credit as a serious actress again. But critically and box office wise, it was kind of a ignored picture. The film wasn't hated, wasn't considered bad. It was just considered there. But since it didn't do what she had hoped for, this movie really made her retreat from Hollywood, and she didn't make another picture for 3 years. And Natalie Wood had control of this picture. She actually picked Sidney Pollack to direct this movie after Robert Redford, who was a good friend of Natalie Wood, suggested him and really gave him his start because Robert Redford and Sidney Pollack were good friends. And Sidney Pollack getting the job for directing it is interesting because originally John Huston was set to direct. This film was produced by Ray Stark under his Seven Arts production. He actually owned the rights to the Tennessee Williams one act play, and he had a lot of success before with The Night of the Iguana, which John Huston directed that, and that's why John Huston was considered to direct this one first because they had such success with Night of the Iguana. And Francis Ford Coppola was tapped to write it because he actually was a staff writer for Seven Arts. So he was under contract. And Francis Ford Coppola had directed this play while he was in college. And at one point, Paramount Pictures considered Richard Burton directing this movie and Elizabeth Taylor starring in the role as Alva. And Ray Stark had an agreement with Paramount Pictures for them to make movies together. And this also leads back to the Taylor and Burton situation because they also had an agreement with Paramount Pictures. But this is the first of the 7 films that Robert Redford and Sidney Pollack would make together. This property is condemned, was shot on location in Mississippi and Louisiana with some, interior shots on a soundstage in Los Angeles. But this is definitely a smaller, not as well known film, but I think it bodes watching. Like I said, I saw it several years ago and really liked it. It was during my kick where I would watch like a whole director's or whole actresses slate of movies, and I was wanting to check out Natalie Wood's movies, and I watched all of her movies, including this. And this one was interesting because of the not only Natalie Wood, but the Robert Redford pairing and the fact that Sidney Pollack directed it and Francis Ford Coppola wrote it. And I was really surprised by it. You would think with that amount of a talent attached to it, it would be a better known film. And it is remarkable of what a dud it was for Natalie Wood's career. Kind of stopped it in its tracks, made her kind of retire from acting and focus on becoming a mother, which was, one of her dreams was to become a mother. And this film really helped facilitate her being able to focus on that. But I'm really surprised it didn't do better because it is actually a decent movie. I have always liked it. And I think if you've never heard of this or seen it, you should give it a try because I think you would be surprised too by this movie and that it's not better known. I am suggesting that you watch the 1966 movie This Property is Condemned. Give it a chance. Let me know what you think of it. Or if you've seen this movie, tell me what you think of This Property is Condemned. Am I just crazy thinking this movie is an underrated gem that deserves to be more well known, especially for Natalie Wood? She was instrumental in getting this movie made. I know she does, Love with a Proper Stranger and stuff like that, but this was really supposed to cement her career going forward as a serious, more adult actress. And that didn't pan out for her. And I think it's a shame because I think she is really good in this movie, and this movie is worth a watch. I think Natalie Wood doesn't get enough credit in her film career, and she is more known now for the way she died than being the huge star that she was. She was kind of stuck in the middle of classic Hollywood because she started so young, where the movie system was still the classic studio system, and she's really of the age of people like Robert Redford and Gene Hackman and Dustin Hoffman. She should have been more in that group than she was with the older Hollywood group, but she never really got that chance. I mean, when she came back 3 years later, she did have success with Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, but even though she was in her early 30s, they make it seem like she was like so much older in that movie than she actually was. I think Diane Cannon and Natalie Wood are kind of both done a disservice in that movie because it made them seem so much older. But I don't know, they made all of them seem like they were more middle-aged than people in their early 30s. And it made Natalie Wood seems so much older than she actually was. And then her career just kind of fizzles out after that. I mean, she was working the whole time up until her death, but in nothing that would highlight her immense talent. But thank you for joining me again. My name is Stacia, and like I said, I'm just a person on the internet who big movie fan, like to talk about movies. And if you are like me and like that, consider subscribing to this channel. Help me get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm looking forward to getting to 1,000 subscribers this year. And you would help me out, of course, if you subscribe, but also comment. I love responding to everybody's comments. I love just talking about movies with everybody. It also helps me out when you give me a thumbs up or a like or share with other people you know that are movie fans and like to talk about movies. But thank you for joining me. I will see you next time. Love you all. Bye.